Welcome to the Love, Listen, Talk, Repeat podcast. I'm Wendy Capewell, your relationship specialist, and this podcast is all about things relating and affecting relationships. I'll be interviewing guests who are experts in their profession, learning more about what they do and how they help others. In some episodes, I'll be sharing some insights and tips of my own. So settle back and enjoy. Today, I'd like to introduce Esther Lemmens. She is a design and brand consultant. However, today she's going to tell us more about her personal life, which is really kind of her, because I think to share our personal story is, that's really special. So can I hand you over to Esther so she can make her own introduction?
Thanks, Wendy. My name's Esther Lemmens. I am Dutch originally, but I moved to Norwich in 1999, and I have been living in and around Norwich since then, as working as a graphic designer, basically. And more recently, I have niched as a brand and design consultant, which I just really, really enjoy. And I love helping people make their stuff look really good, basically. That's what I love to do.
And I think anybody who has a business, I think they really that's what they're looking for, to make themselves look appealing, because there's a lot of there's a lot of competition out there, and I think we want to attract people, the right people, because the
Absolutely.
people we want to work with, and I think that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn more about you, because you have you have an interesting story.
I do. Well, I have an unusual relationship, I guess you could call it that. My partner is trans. So when I met them, they were actually identifying as female, whereas now, born male, identifying as female, whereas now they identify more as non-binary. So I'm using different pronouns yet again, they, which is maybe a bit confusing, but that's kind of the done thing for people. That's what a lot of people prefer, who identify as non-binary or gender non-conforming, but it does depend on the person, because some might say, actually, I don't mind any of them. Others say, no, it has to be. There are also sort of new words that are used for that kind of thing. So it's a very individual thing, but my partner prefers they. And then she's fine with as well, or they're fine with. So I tend to sort of mix and match a little bit, because I'm having to do it still as well, actually. So, yeah.
Right. So for some people, they may not understand what trans is.
Mm-hmm.
And so could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, it's kind of an umbrella term, trans itself, in that you get, different categories, as it were. There's transsexuals and transvestites and a whole lot of other, shades of gender, really. There are actually, I think, as many genders as there are people, to be fair. And some might argue, some might agree, some might not, that there is no such thing as fully male or fully female, or, fully straight or fully gay or, lesbian. And there's a lot in between there. I mean, since meeting my partner, I have met a lot of people on, from the LGBT community, or the LGBTIQ, the Let Us Keep Expanding, that community. And I've just found out that everyone is different. So, one trans person is not another, for sure. So,
yeah, and I think it's, I agree with you. I think we have hormones in our bodies, and we may have, I think we're on a continuum. That's my belief anyway. Not that I don't understand all about it at all, but I think some of us have more female hormones than male hormones, and some people have more male hormones than female hormones. And I guess for me, and maybe I'm doing a disservice, but I feel that people are just people, and therefore it doesn't matter to me whatever their gender kind of recognition or assignment or whatever else it is.
Mm-hmm.
But then I wonder whether I'm missing a trick in a way or doing a disservice, because maybe I'm dismissing and not really trying to understand or connect with them. That came to me because, I've got lots of friends who are gay, straight, different nationalities, different whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I just accept them for being how they are. But
Mm-hmm.
then I don't know that I'm always trying to understand their struggles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have some gay friends and they talked about going on holiday and they said, well, we're going to this particular resort. And they said, because it's a gay resort. And I said, but why? I didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I accept people for who they are. I guess in my head, it was, well, but we all accept people. I just couldn't understand why others wouldn't. And I suppose that's why I wasn't understanding what they were going through.
That makes sense. Yeah, I feel the same way as you. It's just let people be people, whatever their expression of, the individuality in whatever form that takes. But unfortunately, it's not like that for a lot of people. And I mean, I never really thought about it much either. I think, especially with regards to gender, if you've never questioned your own gender, which I haven't, then, I mean, I have said to my partner, I can never fully understand what you're going through. I can be supportive and I can be compassionate, but that's it really. And I cannot understand fully what it is that what your journey has been and how you felt. I mean, I'm an intuitive person and a highly sensitive person. So I can, I have a certain level of, the ability to sort of put myself in other people's shoes. But I mean, even that has its limitations with regards to things that you just don't experience or have no idea about, really. So, yeah.
And I think that goes for just about anything. It can be race, creed, colour, nationality, anything. I can't understand, and I shouldn't judge anyone until I've walked in a mile in their shoes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think there's something for me, it's very valid to say that, because, we're all on a different journey. We're all individuals, and I believe we are all snowflakes, which means that we're all individuals. We're all special. We're all unique, even though we're all part of the human race.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I agree.
But unfortunately, not everybody appreciates that.
That's true. Yeah.
And I can't say that I don't always judge, because I think we all do at some point.
Oh, yes, we do. It's something that just happens, isn't it?
It does. It's not intentional.
Quickly, yeah. But as long as you stay open-minded to having your mind change, then, that's all you can do, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So how did you meet?
Well, we met at there was a local festival that a friend of mine organises, and we met about 5.5 years ago on the launch night. And I remember there was quite a few people there. I'm thinking about 100 or more. And as the night went on, people sort of left. And I remember I came across my partner. Well, their name is Katie John. And I remember seeing them or noticing them, thinking, oh, I wonder if that person is a man or a woman, or male or female, because I couldn't quite tell from looking at them, right? And a bit later on, I saw them speaking to a friend of mine. And by that time, the room had sort of emptied a little bit. And as I was looking at, them, I saw, breasts. So I thought, okay, female, that settles that then. And then I got a bit closer again in, a few hours later or whatever. And I heard them speaking, and I thought, hang on, that's no ordinary woman, because they had quite a deep voice. And I was just kind of, not intrigued, but I was thinking, this is interesting. So I got chatting to them as well, because it happened because they were chatting to a friend of mine anyway. So I just sort of joined in the conversation. And then we just really hit it off. We just got along really well. We had lots of stuff in common, and we decided to just meet up for a chat, really, for a coffee and a chat. And I mean, I think that was about a week later. And then we just, we got on like a house on fire, and that was kind of how it all started, really. And I felt so comfortable with her, it kind of freaked me out almost, which is kind of a paradox, isn't it? But so comfortable with them. It's like, her, them. Like I said, when I met them, they were identifying as female. So, but since they've had surgery now, that's almost 2 years ago. So maybe it had something to do with that they now sort of preferred to be identified as, or be addressed as they. So, that side, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's quite a journey for both of you.
It is. I'd never expected to, not be in the situation, because that doesn't quite sound right, does it? But I've always considered myself open-minded as far as sexuality is concerned. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting it to go where it went, but it, it took some getting used to for me as well. And also, telling my friends and family about Katie. I mean, I didn't know, I wasn't worried about it or anything, but I did not know what to expect, you see. So I was kind of curious to see how people would react. Yeah. But it's all been fine. Yeah. And even my mum and dad, they were a bit taken aback maybe at first, because they weren't expecting it either, but they just thought, well, as long as you're happy, go for it. Yeah.
And that's good to have supportive people around you, because unfortunately there are people who are not, or find it very difficult.
Yeah.
Right. There's that too as well.
Especially in that community, for sure, like, parents and, especially parents and relatives, they're not often, or they can be less than understanding. I mean, I think it all comes from a place of fear and stuff they don't understand, but still they react to it with fear rather than being open, which is a shame, really. So there are a lot of people who are, struggling with their home life. I see it in, the people I've befriended since meeting my partner. So yeah, some of them really struggle. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can relate to that, because, wow, it was 1977, I think. Mm-hmm. One of my brother-in-laws, one of my husband's brothers at that time, he actually announced that he was, we're having a sex change. Right. And that was quite a while ago, and quite something for him to come out and say. He'd got 6 children. He'd been married quite a while. Yeah. And I think the whole family, it rocked them completely. I mean, he was a real man's man.
Yeah. Yeah.
He did a job that was, definitely a man's job at that point. Mm-hmm. But I think it really affected my husband at that point. Mm-hmm. I think it really shook him and bothered him about maybe his own sexuality. Mm-hmm. I've never had the conversation, but I do wonder whether that affected our relationship. Yeah. I had no issues about it. For me, it was, well, he's just who he is, and he needs support and so on. He was very private about it. I think he became very, very private. Mm-hmm. But it was sad, because my husband and I never discussed it really. Mm-hmm. But I do wonder whether that affected our relationship, because I think it did affect him quite a lot. And in those days, it really wasn't out in the open.
Yeah, I feel like the whole sort of situation with where trans people are now is kind of where gay people maybe were 20, 30 years ago, because it's not new by any means, but I think because it's more out in the open, I think more people are coming out about it as well. So it's kind of like, once there's an expression about it, but I'm not sure it translates because I'm thinking about the Dutch version of it. But I think once some people come out and say, right, this is who I am and this is how I feel, then others feel safer to do so. Well, not everywhere, obviously. I mean, Norwich is quite an open place to live. It's very accepting. There's a big LGBT plus community. But yeah, I mean, like you were just saying about going on holiday, there are places now where I would not want to go with my partner. I know it's either not safe or it could be, just a bit too stressful, really. So,
yeah, I can understand that. I think I'm getting more in tune with it as I go along. Well, I just also thinking about that journey that you went through with Katie, you know, kind of having their, you know, going through their treatment, and how it affects, you know, operations. And I wonder what that was like for you, your experience of that.
Well, Katie says that I've kind of been the first partner she's been with who didn't have a vested interest in what, you know, like at the time she did with her body, as it were. Because, I mean, she's been with partners who were, you know, sort of female and wanted a family. So it was in their interest for them, you know, for Katie to not change their body. And Katie's also been in relationships with several lesbians, and for them maybe it would be in their interest for Katie to change their body. So I feel like, well, you know, you need to do what's right for you, and it shouldn't have anything to do with anyone else. And so I just sort of let them make their minds up for themselves. And Katie was actually told by one of her sort of doctors that they were the most reluctant transsexual they'd ever met, because I think Katie tends to overthink stuff, but it's also, I mean, it's a big deal. You know, it's not just something you think, okay, let's do that. If it doesn't work out, I'll change my mind, because you can't really. So.
No. And I think that's quite a big thing. It's such a big step to take, isn't it? I think for anybody.
Yeah, and that's why I don't really understand, because there's obviously people who don't agree with, you know, people being trans or gender non-conforming in any way. But I'm thinking, why would anyone choose a path like that? Why would you choose to, you know, be a social outcast almost? It can be like that, and be, you know, get grief from all sorts of people. It's not something you just think, I'm just going to try this out because it's a lifestyle choice, you know, like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if I can say it, but like, you know, goths, for example, that's a sort of a certain look, and there's a certain, you know, vibe that goes with it, and all sorts of things. And some people, that's just who they are. And other people go through phases, you know, and they dress that way for a while, and then they change and they do other stuff, or they present in a different way. But obviously for gender, that is not, it's not like that, you know, and then it's like a nature versus nurture question as well, isn't it? So, yeah, so born with it, I guess, as Lady Gaga says.
Yeah, and I've quite a big decision to take, I think, and it is quite a journey, I think, because it's not just, oh well, I just fancy that happening, and there's a lot of decisions to be made and a lot of thought processes to go through as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what about things like reduced sex drive? Because obviously hormones will affect sex drive and so on. So how did you cope with that?
Well, when we met, we did have sex as, you know, like a straight couple, I suppose, because of the way our bodies were. Mine still is the way it was, but theirs has obviously changed now. But gradually that started to become less and less frequent. And at first it did bother me, but then it's not that I got used to it as such, but basically Katie sort of actually admitted that they are asexual, which means they don't want sex. Basically, they never enjoyed it. It was painful to them. They just would rather not, you know. They're a very sensual person, and, you know, we have intimacy, but we have now an asexual relationship, basically. Katie keeps saying we should write a book called When Asexual Met Pansexual, because pansexual, I guess, would be my label, if you will. Because that kind of means loving a person no matter what their gender is. It sort of goes a step beyond bisexual. Although some people who identify as bi would say, actually, I don't mind what anyone's gender is either. So it's a bit of a sort of blurred concept, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it just, it did sort of become less and less. We have had an asexual relationship now for about maybe a couple of years, I think. it's been like that. And because of Katie's operation, I mean, they have to get to know their body all over again. And, you know, we've talked about it, and they've said, like, maybe one day I will feel like being sexual again, and maybe I won't. And that's completely up to her. You know, that's her journey, really, basically. Mm-hmm.
How does that affect you? Because you've got, you know, you're a woman, and you know, I don't know how you feel about sex.
Well, I'm not asexual, definitely not. So, I mean, we've talked about this, and basically, in theory, we have an open relationship,
Right.
Which means that at the moment, I'm okay with the situation as it is. If at any point I am not, or if I want to have sex again, and if Katie is not there, you know, if that's not what she wants, then we can, you know, look at other options, or I could look at other options. So that is a possibility. When it arrives, because I mean, I don't expect to feel like, yeah, I obviously don't feel like I'm never having sex again. So we'll see how it goes. But the good thing is, or the important thing is we can take it as it comes, and we can talk about it, and we're very open about things like that. So I think no matter what happens, we can, you know, work around that. But then obviously it's a concern at times, because I think anything like that, it would affect your relationship. It would do, and it would be foolish to think it would not. And I think you have to be quite a strong couple for that to work, or to make that work. Because, I mean, I've seen people have, you know, polyamorous relationships and things like that. And it can be, you have to be really honest, really open. You know, you can't play games. It's more complicated, obviously, than a relationship that involves two people. So, but it can be done. I think it can be done. So, yeah, we shall take that as it comes.
Okay. Yeah. And I suppose I'm curious, or interested really, about the difference between sex, gender identity, and sexual orientation. I know we talked about it briefly, but yeah, I think I think now things I'm hearing more, and my world is opening up, you know, to conversations and meeting people and talking to people, because I think there is there's so much going on. I didn't know until recently about polyamorous. I was like, what is that? So I have to search it and find out, because I think I was talking about open relationships and how would that feel and what was that like. But that's very different from, you know, there's a difference between cheating and there's a difference between polyamorous. But it's still, I'm sure that listeners are going to be interested as well. That kind of whole thing between that sex, gender identity, and sexual orientation.
Yeah, it's been an eye-opener for me as well, actually, because I never really considered a difference between sort of sexual orientation and gender identity, or even I wasn't even familiar with the exact phrases that, you know, before I met Katie. But I did realize, you know, if you think about the LGBTIQ, etc., alphabet soup, the LG and the B, that's to do with sexual orientation. That's who you're attracted to. Whereas the T has to do with your own gender identity. So you can be, you know, any combination of any of them, really. You can be, if you are, say, a man, but you feel like you're in the wrong body and you're really female. But if you still like women, then you start off as a straight man, but then you become, say, a lesbian woman. You know, if you're going for the binary way of expressing it, because some, you know, some trans people, or non-binary or gender non-conforming, they are still very binary. They are, say, that they may have been born one way, but they're going exactly to the opposite side of things. Whereas others feel like, no, I'm kind of in between, and that's fine, and that's where I belong. I don't feel like either. So yeah, that's very different as well. And then there's obviously the sex, which is your physical situation, as it were, because there are obviously people who are born not quite male and not quite female, and for some that is visible, like from their sexual organs, and for others it's you know, it's in the chromosomes, and you can't even tell until they at a later age maybe try to have children and they can't, and then they find out that, you know, they've got this XXY or XXXY and etc. and all these genetic things that no one really understands yet, I think. So it's been so interesting and so fascinating, and that has made me understand there is such a spectrum of it all, like the gender, the sexuality, and the combination of those things, and, you know, and the sex, the physical sex. We have some friends who are intersex, and they, you know, also they didn't know. They've been on a program actually for the BBC, BBC4, I believe, which is interesting. I'll have to share that with you.
Yeah, please do.
But yeah, they had no idea until they became a teenager, and then, you know, found out that they were, you know, born female, so they thought, but they found out they had undescended testes inside them. So they then, you know, it had a big effect on their hormones and their adolescence, you know, and then obviously people in school not understanding, giving them a hard time, all sorts of things like that. So yeah, there's so much going on that we don't understand. So I think keeping an open mind is just really important in that way.
Yeah, and I'm very well aware that there are babies that are born with both sets of sexual organs, and it may not be obvious, but then there's a decision made, and
that is true, and that's really, if you think about it, that's really kind of dodgy, isn't it? And I think they should let people be who they are, and then when they are old enough to make a decision, allow them to choose what they want to do. But this decision is often made for them, and then you find at a later age they then, you know, think, this is not right, I'm not in the right body, I need to live as the opposite sex because that's how I feel. So you see that quite regularly, and I think more and more so. Well,
and that's really tough for anybody, isn't it, to have that label? And I suppose whatever's going on for somebody, I try and veer away from labels. I know that some people feel comfortable if they have a label, whether it's a mental health label or whatever else it might be. But I think for others it can be I think I've always tried to jump out of the boxes people have put me in.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily sexual, but somebody might say, oh, because you're a woman, because you're a mother, because you're a certain age, this is what you are. And I've spent, and I do try and defy things about that, because I don't want to be defined. I don't want someone to make an assumption about me.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot around it. But I just wonder how do we function in the world if we're just treated as a they? That's quite a tough one, isn't it? You think about children at school. And I saw a great program a few months ago now where they were talking about the fact that the way teachers were talking to the children and the way they treated them was having quite an effect on them. Like the male teacher would refer to the girl as, oh, you're right, love, and be really gentle with her, and treat her as though she were not as physically strong as the boy. And I think they were saying up until the age of 7, our bodies are identical in strength, physical strength. And so when they were looking at that and saying, well, no, we need to treat these children the same, what happened was in the program that the girls gained more confidence because they were treated equally.
Yeah.
But there's still something about that, isn't there, about kind of how do you refer to somebody, and does it make more confusion for a child? I don't know.
I don't know either. It's I mean, some children know at a very young age, what if they're in the wrong body or not necessarily, fitting in the group they're sort of put in because of their physical body. What I've heard is the age, or the average age where someone is aware of that, could be about 7, but the average age of coming out is 40. So that is a long time in the closet.
Yeah.
And I think it's less to do with how children are addressed, the male, female, the he, she is not the main issue, I think, but it's the way that they're treated and categorized and stereotyped in a way. And they just need better examples. I mean, you see things like there's 2 books now. They're called Rebel Girls. I'm not quite sure what the exact title is, but I think the Facebook page and website is called Rebel Girls, and it's just a collection of stories of female role models, and that is just brilliant. And I love seeing things like that, and I think there'll be more and more of that coming up, so that girls know that they can do exactly what the guys can do, really, if they want to choose a profession that is not typically one where lots of women choose. Doesn't mean they can't, because everyone else is choosing, So yeah, I think it will slowly become more accepted, and there'll be less of a gap, hopefully, I think, especially here in the West. I mean, I went to Japan year before last, and I feel like you see a lot bigger gap between the sexes and the imbalance there. I find it quite obvious. But it's a bit of a paradox there, because on one hand, you've got the whole Zen side of things, right? And then on the other side, it seems like almost, 20, 30 years ago that the gender inequality does. But it's very subtle as well. It's not really obvious. I think it's very subtle. But it's very interesting to see the cultural differences in that way.
Yeah, I can imagine. But then it's only we are developing more now as a country and accepting more people as they are. I mean, I grew up in an era where we were very, very much gender defined in our roles. And that was it. My father said to me, well, I don't believe there is any point in educating girls, because they're just going to be wives and mothers. But I think there's a point in actually investing in your education, because you can help teach your children.
Absolutely.
There was nothing about me being an individual in my own right, or having my own career, or any of that. And when you think about that, women were very much treated in that way. And that's how we were expected, and that's what the labels we were given, and our roles. You were going to be a wife and mother, and that was going to be it.
Yep.
The decision was made for us.
Yeah.
And it's only now that we're more able to say, well, women can be businesswomen, women can be different, they can have roles in the world, and they can be equal to a man. Let's face it, we still don't have equal pay.
No.
Even though they try and convince us that we don't, just because they give us different job titles. So there's quite a lot, isn't there, about that whole thing. There is a long way to go, and that acceptance. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Esther, that we haven't covered?
Let me see. I have a little document open here with some notes. I think I've mentioned pretty much everything we sort of talked about. There was just sort of something to highlight maybe between, the difference between open relationships and polyamory, because we've mentioned both, and I kind of said that an open relationship is in theory what me and my partner have. And I actually wondered about the difference and discussed it with a discussion group I'm in the other day. And as far as I understand it, having an open relationship means you have call it primary, your main partner, but you also maybe have lovers on the side, or arrangements that, it's up to the individual, I suppose. Whereas I think polyamory, there might not be a primary partner. It might just be a variety of, I don't know, not necessarily equal, but more equal partners. So that's how I understand that to be. And I found, especially since I've met people in the LGBTIQ plus community, that I've seen more of that as well, and it's more common perhaps, or more out in the open perhaps. I don't know, it might not even be more common, but and it's just, I think all it takes is open and honest communication. Because some people might say, oh yeah, I get to have my cake and eat it, but it's not about that. It's still about, you have to do it with respect and openness and honesty. Otherwise it does not work. And if you just want casual relationships, I'm thinking whatever you like, just be honest about it, because there will be other people who want that too. There's no point, or there's no need to lie about it. I think just, there you go, just put it out there and go with it.
Yeah, and maybe do we need to label it again? Is it just not about two people making a decision on how they want their relationship to work, but with honesty and openness? It's when trust is broken and when there are this deceit and people aren't honest with each other. I think that is often where a relationship goes wrong, because there isn't that honesty. So, affairs can work. You can have a three-legged affair in a relationship simply because it can happen. For example, if one partner was disabled and they couldn't fulfill certain criteria that the other one needed, then maybe that person, then they will find the one who's not disabled, they may find somebody who fills their needs. It might be that there's a very happy relationship, but it could be that maybe there is something lacking in that relationship that somebody outside it might fulfill. And as long as it's open and honest, I think there's nothing wrong in that. I think every relationship works in its own merit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's important to not expect the other person, not make them responsible for your own happiness, because that's not their job. That's your own job, really.
Absolutely. And I think that that is such a valid point. I think so many people, you've got to make me happy. No, as you say. But there's also that sense of expectation in relationships, because relationships 2-3 generations ago were much simpler. They married mainly to get either because of social setting, either because of power or finance or just economically useful.
Made sense.
Yeah. So there would have been the woman, all she wanted generally was a man who could give her a roof over her head, give her a source of income, could provide for her, and that was kind of it. For him, he wanted a woman who would keep house and look after the children, and anything else was a bonus on both sides. If she was a good cook, then that was great. And that was kind of the hunter-gatherer versus the nurturer. So the two came together, and that would have been it. And when you take situations like, for example, our royal family, they would have wanted to keep the power, and within certain areas, and that's why they could only marry royalty or certain people, because they wanted to keep that going. But things now have changed so much dramatically.
Totally.
Relationships are, what do we want? We want a good lover. We want our best friend. We want a soulmate. We want a provider. We want, someone who will share our hobbies and interests, who will be intellectually on the same wavelength, let alone all the other things that we want. Maybe it's a provider, maybe it's a good cook, maybe it's all of that. But we want so much more, and we can't expect one person to provide absolutely and all our needs. Not possible.
Yeah. And even when you do find a person that you want to spend, your life with, as it were, like you say, you can't expect them to fulfill all those needs. I mean, that's why you can have friends that you can discuss certain things with if your partner's not interested in that kind of thing. I mean, the way my partner and I started, I mean, the relationship is unusual enough as it is, I suppose, but we moved in together, or rather I moved in with them after about 6 months maybe, and I lived with Katie for 2 years. But we have very different ideas of how to keep a house. She's a bit of a hoarder, I'm a bit of a minimalist, so that clashes. And after 2 years, I got my own place, and people were like, "Oh my God, did you break up?" And we're like, "No, it's fine. We're just not living together." And we both now prefer it that way. I think Katie was a bit reluctant at first and wasn't sure how they'd feel about it. But, you know, they've actually come around to thinking, you know what, it's great. I can do my own thing. We spend time together when we want. But I've got my place, I've got my space. I don't have to worry about compromising about it. So it works for us right now. And that's fine. Yeah.
And I love the fact that you are living in the here and now, because it's nice to have dreams and aspirations and plans for the future. But I think some people get so hooked up on that, they're not enjoying the moment.
Mm-hmm. True.
And I think that's lovely that you are living for the moment and saying, right now, this works. Right now, this is what each of us wants. Right now. And enjoying it, which is, wow, so many people don't. They're so busy looking to the future, and I've seen relationships break up because they haven't paid attention to their relationship. They've been so focused on their career or the children, and when their partners complained and said, I want out, we said, but we were going to look to the future. We were planning, we were going to pay attention. I was going to pay attention to the relationship when the career was off the ground, when the children grow up. But you can't do that with a relationship.
No, not at all. I mean, I really liked what you said in one of your newsletters, like having regular relationship MOTs, not take score as such, but, sort of take a moment and really check in with yourself and your partner. It's like, where are we at? Is it all good? Are we good? Does something change? It's so important. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with me. It's not, hang on a minute, things, are they going the way we want them to? Is it what we want about our relationship? Is it okay? Or is it something, do we need to sit and have a chat? Or are we still on the same page? Or have our dreams and aspirations or the way we want to live our life, has that changed in some way? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because people don't. They just get caught up with, you need to pick the children up tomorrow. Can you pick your socks up off the floor? What's for dinner tonight? And they never, ever really start talking about their dreams and aspirations or what they want from life. Mm-hmm. When I ask somebody, I'll ask a client, what is it that makes you? What are your core beliefs and values? Mm-hmm. And some of them look at me blankly. They haven't got a clue. Yeah. They don't know what ticks for them. Yeah. And if that's the case, how on earth can they form a relationship with someone else?
Absolutely.
Because they don't know what it is that makes them tick. And if they don't know what their core beliefs and values are, how can they know what their partners are and if they're in alignment?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, I think you're right. There's something very valued in that MOT or just checking each other out.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think because I think it depends on where you are as a person, like how well you know yourself and how happy you are in your own skin. That all affects, the relationship you're in with other people as well. And like Katie and I, we talk very openly. We don't, bottle things up. And we just keep it, ticking over as in the moment when it needs to sort of be addressed, really. We've not really had any arguments, to be honest. We don't really argue, which is interesting. We do have differences of opinion and we do tease each other a lot, but that's about it. There is a dynamic sort of between us. Yeah.
Well, it seems to work for you, and I think that's great. And
yeah, it does.
So I'm just wondering how people can get in touch with you. And I'm wondering, first of all, whether you would be okay with people getting in touch with you on a personal level, as well as on your business level. So
absolutely.
I think that's really important. And if you said, no, I just want people to get in touch with me regarding my business, then I think, let's accept that. And
no, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, no, I'm part of a group. I haven't been going recently, but my partner does a lot of workshops and trainings and talks and things regarding sort of gender. There is here in Norwich, there is a local group for family and friends of trans people. It's a support group. They meet every week, or no, every month, I think, and talk. And I think it really helps them sort of understand each other better. And we have, there's also a non-binary group locally. We meet once a month as well. There's a gender and sexuality discussion group. There's loads of groups here in Norwich, but there might be some local to wherever, listeners are as well.
Right.
If not, start one, just do it. Yeah. But by all means, always happy to answer questions or help out. And my partner is always more than happy to do that as well. So yeah, they know a lot of things about that.
Okay. So I think we'll put details in the show notes as well. For anybody who wants to get in touch with you, Esther, what's the best way?
I think the best way is via my website, which is zestydesign.co.uk. There is a contact form on that. And or find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I spend a little bit of time on LinkedIn, but not too much. But Facebook is my, call it drug of choice, I suppose. Yeah, that is. So, you can find me on any of those. Great.
Thank you so much for today. I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting to you. I've learned things which have been really helpful, and it's just been delightful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me on. That was great. Thank you.
So you can find all the information about this show in the show notes. And you can find lots more on my website, www.yourrelationshipspecialist.co.uk, including the link to my podcasts. And you can also sign up on my newsletter, which has lots more tips and offers. So until next time, bye for now.